Hey everybody, my name is Spencer, and in this video I'm going to give you a preview of the 2 to 6 player racing game Scrap Racer, designed by Anika and Sebastian Richter, published and sent to me by Queen Games. I'm going to give you an overview of the gameplay so you can get a good understanding of how the game works to better inform your decision to back the game. At the end of the video, I'll give my final recommendation of who the game is for, and ultimately, if you should back it. Before I move on, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the channel. You'd make my heart race. So, Scrap Racer is exactly what you'd expect. A game where you are racing scrap vehicles, made from scrap to be precise. It's a light, family-weight racing game that's more zany than it is strategic. But that's not a bad thing. Each player will control an anthropomorphic animal and its vehicle. Some are flying, some are rolling, and one is even running. The race takes place on a modular track. There are several recommended tracks, but you could come up with your own wacky race course. On this track are several boost tokens that players can collect when they land on those spaces. What are the boost tokens for? Good question. To go vroom vroom in this race, players will each take a turn pushing their luck by rolling dice one at a time. Upon rolling the first die, the active player must decide if they want to roll another die to add to their first die. They could theoretically keep going until they roll all 6 dice. But if the player rolls a die that matches one of the previously rolled, they crash. When a player crashes, they'll draw a card from a crash deck corresponding to the number that caused them to crash. The cards in the deck can be pretty bad, or, strangely enough, can benefit the active racer, because you just never know how a crash might affect your standings, or your opponents. Remember those boost tokens I mentioned? Of course you do, you're smart. Now these will have one of 3 effects: plus or minus 1 to a die, re-roll a die, or flip a die to its opposite side. You can use these to manipulate any double that you rolled, so if you have some of those, that can go into your decision of whether to press your luck or not. But let's say you don't have a gambling problem and stop pressing your luck. You'll move your racer as many spaces as the combined total of your dice. As I mentioned, if you land on a space with a boost token, you grab it and add it to your player board. But if you land on a space with another racer, it's battle time, baby! That's right, there is fighting in this game. Each player involved in the fight will roll a die. The higher roll wins, and the winner moves forward 1 space. Nothing happens to the loser. Players will race around the track 3 times, with the winner being the one whose racer is leading the field at the end of the final round, which is triggered when one player crosses the finish line for the 3rd time. So Scrap Racer is a roll and move, push your luck racing game, but there's more to it that makes it a sometimes unpredictable experience. For example, each time a racer crosses the finish line, a goal card is drawn. Now remember that can happen up to 3 times per racer. Those goal cards can really change up the race. Some effects will cause the racer in last place to move forward 7 spaces. Or all but first player move forward 1 space. There's even one that moves the last 2 players up 5 spaces. Those are fun, and I always get excited when someone has to draw one, especially if I'm in last place. You got the crash cards that I talked about earlier, and then there are bonus cards. Now each time a player crashes, they receive a bonus marker. Once they have 3 of those, they get a bonus card. Now those are additional beneficial effects that players can use on their turns. There's a catch-up card, advance to the next curve, advance to the next straight, and several move X spaces. Finally, a raucous racing game wouldn't be complete without player abilities. Each character has an ability that gives them an edge in a certain category. Jackal, for example, always wins fights and moves forward 2 spaces when he wins instead of the usual 1. Swifty moves 1 space forward if it lands on a curved space, and Twister will move forward 1 space if he passes a racer during its turn. Well, that's the game in a nutshell, albeit a pretty large one. So now let's get to my breakdown. Hopefully you caught on to the amount of luck in the game. Dice rolling and card drawing play a huge part in the outcome of the race, and some people might not like that. The game is a good length. For a game with about 4 players, I found it lasted about 45 minutes. And even though you complete 3 laps, it never feels like you are twiddling your thumbs while waiting for your turn. Turns are quick, and all players need to be engaged since effects can happen to anyone at any point in the game. I will say that with the right approach, the game is a lot of fun. I've played it with adults and with kids, and both groups had a good time. But you do need to know going into the game that it's about the experience and the events that unfold, rather than an in-depth strategy. If you like laughing at your opponent's misfortunes, and are a good sport when you get passed by, I think you'll enjoy Scrap Racer. Let's talk about player count. The game is for 2 to 6 players, but you need to know that there always needs to be at least 4 racers in the game at a time. So if you're playing 2-player, each player will have to control 2 racers. And for a 3-player game, 1 person will need to control 2 racers. So, Scrap Racer is for families, casual gamers, new gamers, and I'd say kids as young as 6. Scrap Racer is probably not ideal for gamers looking for a deeply strategic game, 2 players, or people who don't like luck in their games. But sometimes you do need a silly and eventful racing game, so even that group mentioned above might enjoy Scrap Racer. Now, I won't comment on game component quality or anything like that, since the final product might be different than the one shown in this video. So, should you back it? Well, it really comes down to what kind of gaming experience you are looking for. Light, raucous, and friendly competition? Go for it. Heavy, complex, strategic? This probably isn't the game you're looking for. I think that about covers it. That's Scrap Racer. If you have any specific questions about anything I mentioned in this video, or a question about rules, just put it in the comments below, and I'll answer them as soon as I can get to it. Please give this video a like if you found it helpful, and subscribe to the channel, and be on the lookout for other Kickstarter previews coming up. Until next time, don't take the board game hobby too seriously, just lighten up.